In the quiet dawn of a Texas cattle ranch, where the wind usually carried nothing more than dust and distant mooing, something felt wrong. The herd, normally calm and slow-moving, huddled together in a tight, anxious circle near the old barn. And when Cole Dawson stepped closer, he froze. A tiny horse, no taller than his youngest calf, limped across his property, trembling, covered in road dust and burrs. But that wasn't what made Cole's stomach drop. It was the small leather pouch strapped to its saddle, a pouch carrying something that no rancher should ever find, something that could ruin reputations, expose buried secrets, and drag Cole straight into a dangerous conflict he never asked for. Before we dive deeper, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any chapter of this story. By the way, where are you watching from? I'd love to know how far these stories are traveling. The first rays of sun had barely stretched across the plains when Cole Dawson stepped out of his ranch house, coffee mug in hand, ready to start another long day. The air was cool, the sky painted in pale orange and fading stars, and the land smelled of dew, dry grass, and cattle, the familiar sense of his life. But something felt off. Across the wide field, his herd wasn't lounging or grazing. The cattle had clustered together, forming a tight circle as if trying to shield themselves from something. Their low, uneasy mooing carried across the property. Cole narrowed his eyes. "What the hell is spooking y'all this early?" He set down the mug on the porch rail and walked quickly, his boots crushing the gravel, his breath visible in the crisp morning air. As he approached, the cows shifted aside, nervous and skittish. Then he saw it. A tiny horse, smaller than any adult horse had the right to be, stood trembling near the barn. Its dark brown coat was dusty and tangled. Its mane looked as if it had been dragged through mesquite brush. The little animal's ribs were slightly visible, and its hooves were cracked from a long walk on hard ground. Cole blinked once, then twice. He had worked with horses his entire life. Mustangs, quarter horses, cutting horses, even injured strays, but he had never seen one this size. Not a pony, not a foal, something in between. He moved slowly, not wanting to spook the creature. "Easy there, little fella." The horse flinched, but didn't run. It just watched him with wide, frightened eyes. That was when Cole noticed the small leather pouch tied to the saddle strap. A saddle? On an animal this small? He crouched down carefully, checking the buckle, the worn leather, the handmade stitching. Someone had taken time to fit this little horse with gear, meaning it belonged to someone. But who in this region owned a miniature horse? Cole reached forward, giving the animal space to pull away if needed. But the tiny horse didn't move. It was exhausted, maybe even relieved. He untied the leather pouch. Inside was a small folded piece of cloth. Something metal clinked against the leather. Cole felt a prickle crawl down the back of his neck. This wasn't normal ranch business. This wasn't a lost pet wandering in from a neighboring farm. He opened the pouch. What he saw made his chest tighten. A silver badge, dusty, scratched, but unmistakable. A Texas Ranger badge. Cole swallowed hard. Oh, hell. He turned the badge over, and the engraving on the back made the situation even worse. Ranger Thomas Brenner, Unit 07, Presidio County, Brenner, a name he hadn't heard in almost 8 years. A name tied to stories that old-timers whispered about in bars, but avoided speaking of in daylight. Brenner had vanished during a field investigation near the Mexican border, a case connected to cattle thefts, human smuggling, and a ring of corrupt middlemen no one ever managed to expose. And now his badge had just walked onto Cole's ranch, strapped to a terrified miniature horse. Cole looked again at the animal, noticing more details now that the shock was fading. A faint cut above its eye. A dark smear on the saddle strap that looked uncomfortably like dried blood. A rope mark on its flank, as if it had escaped captivity. "What the hell happened to you?" he whispered. The tiny horse nudged his leg, timid, but trusting. Cole exhaled slowly, conflicted. He didn't want trouble. He didn't want law enforcement questions, and he definitely didn't want to get dragged into something involving a missing ranger whose disappearance had never been solved. But here he was, the only one standing in front of an animal carrying a clue that could reopen a case everyone preferred buried. Behind him, the cattle continued to shift restlessly, stamping their hooves, sensing something larger at play. Cole slipped the badge into his pocket. He needed to think. No, he needed help. The closest rancher he trusted was Hank Morales, a man with deep family roots in Texas and connections everywhere from local sheriffs to border ranchers. For if anyone would know who owned miniature horses around here, or what kind of trouble something like this could signal, it'd be Hank. Cole gently took the horse's rope and led it toward the barn. Come on, buddy, let's get you some water before I figure out the mess you just dropped in my lap. As the tiny horse walked beside him, limping slightly, Cole noticed something else tied beneath the saddle, a strip of paper wedged under the leather, damp with sweat. He pulled it out. A handwritten note, 3 words. He doesn't know. Cole's blood chilled. Doesn't know what? He muttered under his breath. But deep down he had a feeling he already knew the answer. Whatever this message meant, whatever this horse had escaped from, he wasn't supposed to find out, yet now he was in the center of it. And somebody out there, somebody dangerous, would soon realize the little horse never made it back. The sun had climbed higher over the Texas plains by the time Cole settled the tiny horse into a clean stall. The little animal drank water in small, cautious gulps, as if expecting someone to yank it away at any moment. Its ears twitched at every distant noise. A truck on the highway, a crow landing on the fence, even the rustling of hay. Cole watched silently from the barn doorway, arms crossed over his chest. His mind wasn't on the horse anymore. Not really. It was on the badge now in his pocket. The message. The implications he didn't want to admit. Texas was big, but trouble had a way of traveling fast, and whatever brought this horse here wasn't the kind of trouble that stayed quiet for long. He finally pulled out his phone. Hank answered on the second ring. "What's got you calling this early, Cole? Your cows unionize overnight?" "Not exactly," Cole said. "I need you to come by the ranch. It's important." Hank paused. "How important?" Cole looked at the stall, watching the little horse's sides rise and fall with shaky breaths. "Important enough that I'm not saying it over the phone." Another pause. "All right, I'll be there in 30. Cole hung up and stepped back into the yard. His ranch stretched wide behind him, long fields of mesquite and wild grass, fences running like stitched lines across the land. Normally he found comfort in the familiarity of it all. Today it felt exposed. He walked toward the pasture, checking the ground out of habit. That was when he saw them. Tracks, fresh ones, hoof prints belonging to the tiny horse, and something else beside them. Larger prints, deeper, likely belonging to a full-sized horse. 2 sets of boot tracks. The pattern suggested someone had ridden up close to his property edge during the night. The tiny horse's prints veered away abruptly, cutting across the hard-packed dirt toward the ranch. The others continued parallel to the fence, then disappeared into the brush. Someone had chased the animal. Cole crouched and touched the disturbed soil. Still loose, recent, hours old, maybe less. His jaw tightened. Whoever those men were, they were organized, closing in. And the tiny horse hadn't come from nowhere. It had fled from someone who didn't want it found. Cole stood and walked back toward the barn, his mind racing. Someone would come looking for this horse. Someone dangerous enough that a Texas Ranger's badge had ended up on it. Hank Morales arrived 26 minutes later, his old green pickup rumbling into the yard. He stepped out wearing a faded denim jacket, a tan cowboy hat, and an expression that usually meant he expected trouble but hoped it was small enough to ignore. "All right," Hank said, brushing dust from his sleeves. "What's this all about?" Cole didn't waste time. He led Hank into the barn. The moment Hank saw the miniature horse, he let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be damned. What are you doing with one of these?" "You tell me," Cole replied. "It walked onto my ranch before sunrise." Hank approached the stall, examining the horse closely. He checked its hooves, the saddle strap, the burrs tangled in its mane. "This is a Class A miniature," Hank said. "Not a dwarf, not a pony. Good bloodline. Expensive. Somebody took real care breeding this little guy." Cole nodded toward the saddle strap. "Check the pouch." Hank frowned, reached in and pulled out the small leather bag. Cole watched the man's face stiffen as he found the badge. "Jesus, Cole," Hank whispered. "Where'd you say you found this horse?" "Right at the edge of my herd. Spooked the cattle." Hank turned the badge over, eyes widening further. "Ranger Brenner? I thought they closed his case years ago." "They closed it," Cole said. "They didn't solve it." Hank exhaled, long and slow. "You sure no one else saw the horse?" Cole shook his head. "Haven't told a soul except you." Hank rubbed his jaw. "Cole, this is the kind of thing that puts a man on someone's radar. Real ugly people were mixed up in Brenner's disappearance. Folks who don't like loose ends." Cole leaned against the stall door, crossing his arms. "I figured as much." "Then why call me?" Hank asked. Cole hesitated. "Because you know the ranches down by Presidio County better than I do. You know who breeds minis. You know who works both sides of the border. If anyone can tell me who this horse belongs to, it's you." Hank didn't answer right away. He examined the horse again, then the saddle, then the strap where the note had been tucked. Finally, he said, "Let me see the message." Cole handed him the torn slip of paper. Hank read it once, then twice. "He doesn't know." Hank folded the paper carefully and gave it back. "This ain't good." "No kidding. I mean, really not good, Cole. This looks like someone sending a warning, and if the horse was headed your direction, maybe someone expected it to get here." Cole frowned. "Why me? I don't know a damn thing." "You sure about that?" Hank asked quietly. Cole stiffened. "What's that supposed to mean?" Hank held up a hand. "Easy, I'm just saying. You had some history with Brenner, didn't you?" Cole looked away. "A long time ago. He helped me out with something. Nothing illegal. Just complicated." "And maybe," Hank said slowly, "someone believes you know more than you're letting on." Cole didn't respond, because deep down, there was something. Something he hadn't thought about in years. Something he hoped was long buried. But before he could say anything, the tiny horse lifted its head, ears pricking sharply toward the barn entrance. Cole and Hank turned at the same time. A truck engine, slow, deliberate, rolling onto the property. Cole's heart dropped. "Are you expecting anyone?" "No," Hank said. "You?" "Not a chance." The truck stopped outside. Doors clicked open. Boots hit gravel. Cole and Hank exchanged a loaded glance. Someone had come looking for the horse, and they had arrived far sooner than either man expected. The sound of the truck door slamming echoed through the yard, sharp and out of place in the morning quiet. Cole felt his chest tighten. Hank instinctively shifted his weight, angling slightly in front of the stall where the tiny horse stood hidden behind wooden boards. Even the animal seemed to sense the sudden tension, stepping back, its hooves scraping the straw. The boots outside crunched slowly on gravel, not the stride of a neighbor dropping by, not the casual stomp of someone who felt welcome. This was deliberate, careful, a warning wrapped in calm footsteps. Cole moved to the barn door and peered out. Her dusty black pickup sat idling by the corral, its windows tinted too dark for ranch country. The morning sun bounced off the windshield, making it impossible to see inside. After a few seconds, the driver's door opened again, and a man stepped out, tall, lean, dressed in jeans tucked into scuffed boots and a beige work shirt with no ranch logo. No brand, no badge, nothing to indicate who he worked for, but everything about him said trouble. The man spotted Cole and raised a hand in an easy, practiced gesture, friendly enough on the surface but stiff beneath. "Morning," the stranger called out. His voice carried a smoothness that didn't match the rough edges of this part of Texas. Cole didn't return the smile. "Morning, you lost?" The man removed his sunglasses and tucked them into his shirt. His eyes were sharp, pale blue, scanning every detail of the ranch as if cataloging it. The fences, the barn, the path leading from the pasture, the footprints. "I might be," the man said. "Depends who I'm talking to. You Cole Dawson?" Cole felt Hank step up behind him. "Who's asking?" Hank said. The stranger's gaze flicked toward Hank, giving him the same cold assessment. Then he pulled something from his pocket. Not a badge, not an ID, but a folded photograph. He held it up. A miniature horse. The same size, same coloring, same leather strap. Cole's pulse thudded once in his throat. "We're looking for a lost animal," the stranger said. "Ran off last night from a property about 20 miles west. You boys seen anything unusual around here?" Cole forced himself to keep his voice steady. "Most unusual thing this morning was my cattle getting riled up, but that happens. Coyotes, stray dogs." The man stared at him for a long beat. Too long. Then he slipped the photo back into his pocket. "You mind if I take a look around?" he asked casually. "Wouldn't want the poor thing getting hurt." Cole stepped forward, blocking the barn entrance without appearing to. "Actually, I would mind. This is private land. You want to come on, you need a warrant, or at least a damn reason besides a picture." The stranger didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. Slow, controlled, the kind of smile that meant he wasn't used to hearing the word no. "I respect boundaries," he said. "But see this little horse? It's real important to its owner, worth a lot of money." He paused. "And some things worth more than money." Hank shifted closer. "You with law enforcement?" The man's smile widened just a fraction. "Not exactly." "Then you're trespassing," Hank said. "Turn that truck around and get lost." The stranger's eyes hardened for the first time, a flash of irritation breaking through the mask. "You boys sure you haven't seen it?" he asked again. His voice was quieter now, lower, more honest, and that honesty wasn't the friendly kind. Cole kept his face unreadable. "Can't help you." The man studied both men for several long seconds. Then he took a step back, dust puffing around the heel of his boots. "Well," he said, In case it wanders by, you tell me. He reached into the truck and tossed a small card toward Cole. It landed in the dirt at his feet. The truck engine growled, kicked up gravel and peeled away down the ranch road. Only after the dust cloud drifted off did Cole bend to pick up the card. No name, no company, just a phone number, and a single printed symbol, a star outline similar to a ranger badge but without the central emblem, a blank star, empty. Hank whistled softly. Who the hell gives out business cards like that? People who don't want you to know who they are, Cole said. They stood in silence for a moment, the wind carrying the fading rumble of the truck into the open plains. Finally, Hank said, "He'll be back. You know that." Cole tightened his grip on the card. "Yeah, I know." He turned and walked back to the stall. The tiny horse watched him with wide, nervous eyes, sensing the shift in the air. Cole gently ran a hand along its neck. "You're bringing a storm with you," he murmured. Hank stepped beside him. "Cole, we need to figure out what happened before those men do. You find anything else on the horse? Any marking, brand, anything?" Cole hesitated. Then he pulled the ranger badge from his pocket. Hank's eyes went hard. "Show that to the man outside and you'd be following Brenner into the dirt." Cole nodded slowly. "I know." "And the note?" Hank asked. Cole reached into his front pocket and unfolded the small, sweat-stained slip. "He doesn't know." Hank stared at the message again. "Cole, what if this wasn't meant for you? What if it was meant for whoever was chasing the horse?" Cole looked at the tiny animal, imagining it running through dark scrubland, chased by men on full-sized horses, dodging flashlights, barbed wire, and trucks. He imagined someone slipping that message into its saddle, knowing it had one shot to get away. "Then that means," Cole said slowly, "whoever wrote this thinks someone's in danger, someone who doesn't realize it." Hank nodded grimly. "Or it means someone's trying to make you think that." Cole stiffened. Both possibilities were bad, but one thing was clear. The tiny horse wasn't just a runaway. It wasn't lost. It wasn't abandoned. It had been sent, and somebody out there wanted it back enough to show up before breakfast. Cole folded the badge and the note together, slipping them into a metal lockbox in the corner of the barn. Then he locked it and pocketed the key. "We're not calling that number," Hank said. "Not unless we want trouble coming faster," Cole agreed. "We already have trouble." Cole exhaled through his nose. "Yeah, but I want to know why." He closed the barn door carefully, leaving the tiny horse inside where it was safe, for now. Then he turned to Hank. "We're heading west," Cole said, "to where the horse came from. 20 miles or so. We follow the tracks, we see who's missing a miniature horse, and we figure out what the hell Brenner has to do with this." Hank nodded once. "Then let's move before someone else does." The two men stepped out into the open Texas sunlight, unaware that half a mile down the dirt road, a second truck had pulled over on the shoulder, and someone inside was watching them through binoculars. The sun had climbed high enough to warm the dust lifting off the ranch road by the time Cole and Hank rolled out in Hank's pickup. Cole sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, eyes on the open land stretching endlessly in every direction. West Texas had always felt vast, but today the distance carried a different kind of weight. Like every mile they drove brought them closer to something neither man was sure they wanted to find. Hank steered with one hand and kept the other resting near the gear shift, his jaw grinding slightly as he replayed the morning in his mind. "You know," Hank said finally, "we could have waited. Could have called the sheriff before leaving the ranch." Cole shook his head. "You think the sheriff's department wants anything to do with a case connected to Brenner? They swept that whole mess under the rug years ago." "Yeah," Hank admitted. "I guess they did." The truck rumbled over a cattle guard, rattling the windows. Dust plumed behind them like a smoke trail. 20 miles west, you said," Hank continued. "That puts us near Los Palmas Road, real close to the border, folks. Could be cartel-adjacent ranches, could be migrant camps, could be private breeders, could be anyone." But Cole wasn't thinking about the landscape. His thoughts kept circling back to the badge, the note, the tiny horse limping into his yard like it had been carrying the last cry for help from someone who had run out of time. "What exactly did Brenner help you with back then?" Hank finally asked. "You never said." Cole looked ahead, the highway heat shimmering in waves. "It was nothing illegal, just my brother." Hank glanced over. "Dean?" Cole nodded. "Dean was mixed up with some guys he shouldn't have been, thinking he could make quick money hauling goods across ranch lines at night. Not drugs, stolen equipment mostly. Brenner found him before the wrong people did. Told me straight, 'Get your brother out now, or next time it won't be me that finds him.'" Hank leaned back in his seat. "I didn't know that. That's because I didn't want anyone knowing." Cole sighed. Dean left the state after that, joined a construction crew in Oklahoma. Never looked back, and Brenner disappeared not long after that, Hank said quietly. Cole didn't reply. He didn't need to. The truck climbed over a ridge, revealing a long stretch of ranch land dotted with barbed wire fences and mesquite trees. Somewhere out there, the tiny horse had run through the dark, chased by men who didn't want it to reach anyone, especially not Cole. Hank slowed the truck. "This is where you saw the tracks on your side?" "Yeah," Cole said, pointing. "Let's check this ridge." They parked and got out. The dry wind carried the smell of sun-baked earth and distant cattle. Cole crouched low, scanning the dirt. The tracks were faint now. Wind and time had begun to erase them, but he could still make out the distinctive small hoof pattern of the miniature horse. And beside them, larger hoof prints. 2 horses, 2 riders. The prints headed west, weaving through brush and following a shallow path carved by old ranch trucks. "They were driving it hard," Cole muttered. "Look at the stride. Long fast, that horse was running for its life." Hank knelt beside him. "And look here, the big one split off for a bit, maybe trying to box it in." Cole followed the tracks with his eyes. The little horse's prints veered sharply to the left, nearly colliding with a patch of prickly pear cactus. Then they straightened, heading west, toward whatever hell it had just escaped. "Let's keep going," Cole said. They drove another 10 miles before hitting the faded sign reading Los Palmas Ranch Road, rusted, pocked with bullet dents, a familiar landmark for all the wrong reasons. Hank pulled over again. "Tracks look fresher here," he said. Cole stepped down into the dust and felt the change immediately. The ground was more disturbed, as if multiple horses had passed through recently. The hoofprints overlapped, some recent, some older. A few bootprints appeared beside them. Hank crouched down. "This ain't normal traffic. Looks like a group's been moving through here at night." Cole scanned the distance. Old ranches dotted the area, many abandoned or under quiet ownership. Some were legitimate, some less so. "You thinking what I am?" Cole asked. "Yep," Hank said. "Someone's using this land for something they don't want folks knowing about." Cole rubbed the back of his neck. "Then why risk the horse running off? Why bring a miniature out here at all?" Hank shrugged. "Could be used to carry messages. Could be a decoy. Could be nothing. But it ain't normal." Before Cole could respond, Hank froze. "There," he whispered, pointing across the scrubland. A small structure, barely visible through the brush, sat about half a mile out. Not quite a barn, not quite a shed, more like an old foreman's shack, long abandoned but recently patched on one side with fresh tin roofing. Cole's stomach dropped. Someone's been using that. "Tracks lead right to it," Hank confirmed. The men exchanged a look. "Could be dangerous," Hank warned. "Everything about today's been dangerous," Cole replied. They approached the shack slowly, leaving the truck hidden behind a cluster of mesquite trees. The ground was scattered with old beer bottles, hoofprints, and tire marks. Someone had been here, recently and often. Cole reached the door first. It hung crooked on a single hinge, creaking as the wind pushed against it. He nudged it open with the toe of his boot. "Anyone inside?" Hank whispered. "No voices," Cole said. They stepped in. The smell hit first. Sweat, leather, oil, and something metallic. Then they saw the table. Maps, photos, saddle straps, radio equipment, a half-eaten plate of food. And in the corner, a small wooden crate lined with straw. Cole's throat tightened. It was just the right size for a miniature horse. "This is where they kept it," he said quietly. Hank walked over to the crate and crouched. "Recently, too, is straws fresh?" Cole's eyes scanned the table, and one photograph nearly made his heart stop. A picture of Ranger Brenner, pinned under a knife, and next to it, a second photo. Cole himself, standing at a feed store 2 weeks ago, unaware he'd been photographed. Hank cursed under his breath. "They've been watching you, Cole." Cole stepped back, pulse hammering. "Why? Why me? I've got nothing to do with this." But Hank didn't respond. His eyes were locked on something else, a folded map with a red circle drawn around a point near Cole's property. The circle had a single word scrawled next to it. "Tonight." Cole felt the air leave his lungs. "They're coming to my ranch," he whispered. Hank stood, face hardening. "Then we don't have much time." Before they could speak another word, the faint crunch of gravel outside cut through the silence. Cole's eyes snapped to the door. Hank's hand drifted to his waistband. Someone else had arrived, and this time they weren't driving away. The sound of gravel crunching outside the shack froze both men in place. It wasn't the cautious, slow approach of the man from the ranch that morning. This was heavier, quicker, more purposeful, Someone walked with the confidence of a person who believed they owned whatever was on the other side of the door. Cole locked eyes with Hank. No words needed. Hank moved silently to the right side of the shack, taking cover behind a stack of old feed bins. Cole slipped behind the uneven wall beside the doorway, forcing his breath to steady. The steps grew louder, closer. A shadow crossed the doorway. Whoever it was didn't hesitate. The figure stepped inside without even knocking, pushing the crooked door wide open. A man in dark jeans, boots coated in dust, and a black utility jacket paused just inside the entrance. He wasn't the same man from the ranch. This one was younger, broader in the shoulders, his hands gloved and his jaw tense. His eyes scanned the room with a quick, practiced precision. He recognized the crate, the maps, the radio equipment, and he recognized they weren't alone. Cole could see the moment the man realized things were wrong, the slight shift of his stance, the fingers curling just a little too close to the inside of his jacket. Hank saw it too. "Hands where we can see 'em," Hank said, stepping out from behind the bins. The man didn't startle, he didn't lift his hands either. Instead, he spoke calmly, like someone annoyed he had to deal with unexpected business. "You boys are someplace you shouldn't be." Cole stepped out from his spot by the door. "Funny, we were thinking the same thing about you." The man's expression didn't change. "Turn around, walk out. I didn't see you, you didn't see me, no one gets hurt." Hank scoffed. "Does that line work on people who don't know they're being hunted? 'Cause I promise you this ain't that kind of crowd." The man's jaw tightened. "I'm not here to clean up after idiots who can't keep a horse contained." Cole stepped closer. "So the horse was yours?" The man looked at him sharply. "Where is it?" Cole didn't respond. Neither did Hank. The stranger stared back and forth between them, and something cold flickered in his eyes, the awareness that these two men weren't going to fold. He exhaled, annoyed. "Listen," he said, lowering his voice. "That horse is part of an ongoing operation. It got spooked, got out. We just need it back. Nobody's looking to cause trouble." "Then why the chase?" Cole snapped. "Why was it running for its life through the desert?" The man didn't blink. "It wasn't supposed to get loose." "That's not an answer," Cole said. The stranger studied Cole for a long, tense beat. Then his gaze shifted to the table, to the map, to the red circle marked Tonight. He froze. A single muscle in his jaw twitched. Then he looked back at Cole with a different kind of expression, sharper, assessing whether Cole had seen too much. "What do you know?" he asked quietly. Cole swallowed the instinct to back away. "Enough to know my ranch is marked for something tonight. Enough to know Brenner's badge turned up on that horse. Enough to know you're not here for cattle or land." The man's eyes hardened into something almost dangerous. "You have no idea what you've walked into," he said. "Then why don't you tell us?" Hank countered. The stranger didn't. Instead, he moved, fast. His hand darted into his jacket. Cole lunged forward. "Stop!" But the man wasn't reaching for a gun. He pulled out a small black radio, pressed a button, and said, "Target located." Cole felt the blood drain from his face. "Shit!" Hank lunged toward him, but the man was already backing toward the door, slipping out with quick precision. "Cole, move!" Cole ran for the doorway, but by the time he burst out into the sunlight, the stranger was sprinting across the scrubland toward a black SUV half hidden behind a mesquite grove. Cole didn't think. He chased. The man reached the SUV's door and yanked it open. Cole was 20 yards behind him, sprinting hard, boots kicking up dust. "Stop!" Cole shouted. The man ducked inside and slammed the door. The engine roared to life. A second later, the vehicle shot forward, scattering dust and mesquite branches as it barreled away from the shack. Cole stopped running, chest heaving, watching the SUV disappear into the open desert. Hank ran up behind him. "You okay?" Cole doubled over, hands on his knees, forcing air back into his lungs. He called someone. He called in backup. Hank looked grim. "Then we don't have long." Cole straightened, mind racing. "They know exactly where we are, which means they know we found the shack, which means they know we know about tonight." Hank nodded. "And your ranch." A wave of dread rolled through Cole, thinking of the tiny horse back home, alone in the barn, thinking of what these men were willing to do for a lost animal, for information, for whatever operation they were running. "We need to get back," Cole said immediately. "Now." They ran back to Hank's truck and climbed in. Hank floored it, tires digging into the dirt before catching traction. As they sped through the desert back roads, Cole stared out the window, jaw clenched. "They weren't just chasing that horse," he murmured. "They were protecting something or someone." Hank nodded. "And that note, he doesn't know. Cole, what if that message wasn't about you, At all. Cole looked at him sharply. What if the note was warning Brenner? Hank continued. What if he didn't know something important, and whoever tried to warn him sent the horse? Cole shook his head. But Brenner disappeared years ago. Yeah, but that badge didn't. Cole stared at the horizon ahead. The heat haze blurred the distance, making every shape dance like a mirage. But one thing was clear. Someone had been using that little horse to send messages. Someone had been hunted down for trying. And now someone much worse was coming to Cole's ranch. Hank pressed harder on the accelerator. They needed to reach home before the men in the SUVs did. Before tonight. Before whatever was planned reached Cole's doorstep. The sun was dropping low, turning the Texas sky into a wash of burnt orange and gold by the time Hank's truck sped back through the entrance of Cole's ranch. The dust they kicked up lingered like a warning trail behind them. Cole's jaw was tight, his fingers gripping the door handle hard enough to turn his knuckles pale. As they approached the barn, Cole felt something he rarely felt on his own land: vulnerability. The ranch had always been his safe place, a stubborn patch of earth where life was simple, predictable, grounded, but now it felt exposed. Like every inch of dry grass was a fuse waiting to be lit. Hank killed the engine. We need to see if anyone's been here. Cole nodded. Let's check the barn first. They moved quickly but cautiously, eyes sweeping the perimeter. The air was still eerily so. Even the cattle seemed quieter than usual, huddled near the far side of the pasture, uneasy. Cole pushed the barn doors open. The tiny horse lifted its head immediately, ears perked, tail flicking nervously. It paced inside the stall, hooves tapping lightly against the straw. Cole approached, relieved to see it unharmed. Hey, buddy, you're okay. But Hank wasn't looking at the horse. He was examining the ground. Boot prints, 3 sets, fresh. Hank, Cole said, his voice tightening. They've already been here, Hank replied quietly. Why didn't they take the horse? Cole asked. Hank shook his head. Maybe they didn't find it. Maybe something spooked him, or maybe... He looked toward the ridge behind the barn. Maybe they're coming back with more men. Cole felt a cold wave settle in his stomach. He scanned the stall, then the walls, then the rafters, checking for anything out of place. Nothing had been touched, nothing disturbed except the footprints. The men had come inside, walked the barn, looked around, then left, but not empty-handed. On the barn's center post, stuck by a single rusted nail, was a folded piece of paper. Cole approached slowly. He pulled it off with careful fingers and unfolded it. Inside was a simple message. Don't run. Wait for us. Hank stepped up beside him and let out a low breath. They're playing with you now. Cole crumpled the note in his fist. I'm not waiting for anyone. Hank looked toward the fields. We need to move this horse. If they come back tonight, this barn will be the first place they hit. Cole nodded. We take him to the storm shelter under the shed. No one knows about it except me. That'll buy us time, Hank said, but not much. They worked quickly, moving tools and clearing a path behind the barn to the old shed. The tiny horse followed Cole willingly, sticking close, its small hooves clopping softly on the packed dirt. By the time they reached the shed, the sky had dipped into deeper shades of purple and gray. Distant thunder rumbled, not the threatening kind, but the kind that unsettled the air anyway. Cole lifted the hatch to the underground shelter. It smelled like earth and cedar planks, cool and dry. He led the horse down the ramp, turning on the dim bulb overhead. Stay with me a moment, he whispered, running a hand along the animal's neck. The horse leaned into him, trembling, almost like it knew danger wasn't theory. It was close. Hank stood at the hatch. We don't have much daylight. What's the plan? Cole stepped up beside him. We need to know why tonight matters. Why they circled my ranch on that map. Why they want this horse so damn bad. And Brenner, Hank added quietly. We can't forget him in all this. His badge didn't get here by accident. Cole exhaled. No, it didn't. Hank motioned toward the house. Let's check the security cameras. Maybe we caught something earlier. Cole hesitated. His cameras had gone offline 2 weeks ago during a storm. He kept meaning to fix them, but ranch life had a way of piling tasks higher than a man could manage. They're dead, Cole admitted. Haven't had time to replace the cables. Hank shook his head. Hell, Cole. That's the first thing we should have done. I know, Cole muttered, frustration biting into his tone, but we're here now. Let's make up for lost time. As they headed toward the house, Cole's phone buzzed in his pocket. He froze. Unknown number. Hank noticed. Don't answer. But Cole did, because he had the sickening feeling he knew exactly who was calling. He lifted the phone to his ear, but didn't speak. A calm, low voice filled the line. You should have stayed at the ranch this morning, Cole. Cole's breath caught. The voice continued, tone disturbingly steady. We were hoping you'd cooperate. But now you've gone places you shouldn't have gone. Cole glanced at Hank, who mouthed, "Speaker." Cole shook his head. "What do you want?" Cole said finally. A pause. Then, "We want what's ours, and we want the information that was stolen. The horse didn't deliver it the first time. It better deliver it the second." Cole's heart pounded. "What information?" Another silence, and longer this time. Then, "You'll find out tonight." The line went dead. Cole lowered the phone slowly. Hank stared at him. "They're coming." Cole nodded once. "And they're not looking to negotiate." Just then something caught Cole's eye. Movement at the tree line beyond the yard. Not a person, not a vehicle. Something smaller. A shape stepping out from behind a mesquite trunk. An older man, weathered, holding his hands up. Cole's breath hitched. Hank reached instinctively for his waistband. The man called out, voice rough, carrying across the quiet field, "Cole Dawson, don't shoot. I'm here to help." Cole narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" The man took another step forward, shaking, tired, desperate. "My name's Elijah Brenner," he said hoarsely. "I'm Tom Brenner's father." Hank stiffened. Cole felt the world tilt slightly under his feet. The old man continued, "And if you want to survive tonight, you'd better listen to me." The sky darkened overhead. Night was coming, and with it, the men who wanted the horse back. Elijah Brenner stood a few paces beyond the tree line, shoulders slumped, chest rising and falling, with the weight of a man who had walked far and carried even farther. The fading light carved deep lines across his weathered face, and his clothes were coated in a fine layer of dust, as if he had crossed more than land to get here. Cole approached cautiously, hands open, but tense. Hank stayed behind him, one hand hovering near his waistband, his instincts set to guard mode. "Stay right there," Hank warned. "Tell us why you're on this ranch." Elijah nodded, breath shaky. "Fair. Fair enough." He lifted his hands higher, palms outward. "I'm not armed. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need you to listen." Cole stepped closer. "You said you're Tom Brenner's father." Elijah swallowed hard. "Yes. And I know what fell into your hands this morning." Cole felt the weight of the badge in his pocket like a stone dragging him downward. The horse, the bag, the message. Elijah shut his eyes briefly, pained. "Then you know my son isn't dead." Hank's eyes narrowed. "Tom Brenner disappeared years ago. Everyone assumed—" "No." Elijah cut him off sharply, opening his eyes again. "They wanted everyone to assume he was dead, but he wasn't. He was taken, held, used." Cole felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Used for what?" Elijah took a deep, trembling breath. "Information, access, leverage, my son. My boy got too close to something out here, something he wasn't supposed to uncover. Those men, the ones you met this morning, they run a covert operation out west. Not cartel, not federal, something in between. They answer to nobody." Cole and Hank exchanged a glance. Elijah continued, voice low and breaking. "Tom found out they were using certain ranches as transit points, moving people across the border, moving stolen livestock, moving weapons, quiet routes, hidden trails, all off the books, and he tried to stop them," Cole said quietly. Elijah nodded. "Tried, but they got to him first. Captured him, broke him down, used him to keep their routes clean. They made him help them identify weak points in law enforcement patrols. They kept him alive because he was useful." Hank exhaled, stunned. "Why wouldn't they just kill him? Why keep him for years?" "Because he knew things they didn't," Elijah said. "He had codes, locations, names. They needed those pieces, needed them for their operation to run without interruptions." Cole's mind raced. "Then what does any of this have to do with the horse?" Elijah's voice softened. "Tom didn't have anyone left he could trust. His colleagues thought he'd gone rogue. The law wrote him off. The agency he worked for washed their hands clean. But he remembered you, Cole." Cole flinched. "Me?" "You helped him once," Elijah said. "Years ago, when he needed it most. He knew you were a good man, a decent man, someone who didn't flinch when things got ugly, someone they wouldn't suspect." Elijah swallowed hard. "So he found a way to send something out." "The badge?" Cole asked. "The badge," Elijah confirmed. "And more." Cole felt his pulse quicken. "The message? He doesn't know." Elijah nodded. "Tom was warning me. Or maybe warning you. Or warning anybody he thought might still listen. It meant, you don't know the full story, but you need to." Cole felt the words settle heavy on his shoulders, like responsibility he hadn't asked for, but now couldn't turn away from. Hank folded his arms. "Where is he now?" Tom, is he alive? Elijah hesitated. Pain washed over his face. Then he said softly, he was, 3 days ago. Cole's chest tightened. Was? Elijah wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, his voice trembling. He escaped, tried to get away, injured, weak, barely standing. But he got to that little horse. They'd been using the minis to move messages across fence lines where trucks couldn't go without drawing attention. Cole blinked. The horse was trained to carry messages. Elijah nodded. Smart little thing too, loyal. Tom trusted it. He put the badge in the bag. He wrote that note. And he sent the horse running with everything he had left in him. Hank stared off into the darkening field, and whatever he sent it with, the men didn't get it. No, Elijah said. That's why they're panicking. They lost control of a piece of their operation, and they know someone saw something, someone found something. His eyes locked onto Cole. They know it's you. Cole felt everything inside him go still. He didn't send a badge just for show. There's something else, isn't there? Something the horse carried. Elijah nodded slowly. A second message, hidden under the saddle, behind the stitching. They wouldn't have found it unless they tore the whole thing apart. Cole's voice dropped. And what was in it? Elijah looked toward the barn, where the tiny horse waited below ground. I don't know, he admitted. But Tom told me once, if he ever sent something out to you, it would be the truth. The piece that exposes those men for who they are. Hank's face hardened. Then those men are coming tonight to wipe it all clean. Elijah nodded. They're not coming to talk. They're coming to make sure whatever Tom sent never sees daylight. Cole squared his shoulders. We have to find that hidden message. Hank nodded. Agreed. We tear that saddle apart if we have to. Elijah stepped forward, desperation in his eyes. And then what? You think they'll just walk away? They'll kill you for it. They'll burn this ranch to the ground. They don't leave loose ends. Cole's voice was steady, calm as but resolute. They'll have to go through me first. Hank stepped up beside him. And me. Elijah looked at both men with a mix of gratitude and fear. You don't know what you're facing. Cole shook his head. Maybe not, but I know what I'm protecting. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of oncoming rain and the distant hum of engines on a far-off road. Hank turned his head. Hear that? Cole listened. One engine, then another, then more, growing louder, closer. Elijah's face drained of color. They're early. Cole looked toward the storm shelter. The horse stays hidden, he said firmly. We get that message. We get the truth. And we survive the night. Hank nodded once, firm and sharp. Elijah whispered, God help us. Night fell fully, and the men coming for them were already on the road. The roar of engines drifted through the cooling night air like a warning carried on the wind. Cole felt it in his bones, deep, low, steady, not hurried, not frantic. Men who knew exactly where they were going and what they intended to do when they arrived. Hank peered toward the long dirt road cutting across the horizon. We don't have long, Cole. Cole nodded. Then we move fast. They hurried back to the shed where the storm shelter lay hidden beneath the floorboards. Elijah followed behind, limping slightly, every breath shaky and uneven. The fear in his eyes wasn't only for himself, it was for the truth his son had risked everything to send. Cole lifted the hatch. The tiny horse looked up from below, ears twitching, sensing the tension. It shuffled anxiously, eyes wide, nostrils flaring. Cole descended the ramp slowly, murmuring soft reassurances only half meant for the animal. You did good, little guy. Real good. Hank climbed down behind him with a small toolkit he must have grabbed from the barn on the way in. We tear that saddle apart, Hank said. Stitch by stitch if we gotta. Cole lifted the horse's saddle carefully. Years of leather work told him immediately where to look, places where stitching seemed too tight, too new, too deliberate, places that didn't match the wear on the rest of the saddle. This right here, Cole said, running a thumb along the underside. See that? New thread. Someone patched something over. Hank leaned in. That's our spot. Elijah stood at the hatch above, trembling hands gripping the wooden frame. Be careful with it. Tom said the message would be small, fragile, hidden well. Cole used a small awl to carefully pry the stitching loose. The leather creaked softly as he worked. The horse nudged his shoulder, anxious and restless. Easy, buddy, Cole whispered again. After a minute, Hank spotted something. There, see it? Behind the layer of stitched leather was a thin strip of fabric, not paper, canvas, folded and reinforced to survive rough conditions. Cole slid it out gently, holding his breath. The strip was narrow, maybe 5 inches long and 2 inches wide, wrapped tightly around something rigid. Cole peeled the canvas open. Inside was a USB drive. No markings, no label, just a plain black casing scratched from use. Elijah inhaled sharply. He did it. He really did it. He found a way. Cole didn't say anything for a moment. He just stared. This little thing, this tiny, unremarkable drive, was what Tom Brenner had given everything for, what those men were willing to kill for, what the horse had carried across miles of desert, chased by men who answered to no agency. "What's on it?" Hank asked quietly. Elijah's voice cracked. "Tom told me once, if anything happened to him, he'd make sure the truth found its way out. Names, routes, transactions, evidence, everything those men built their operation on." He wiped his eyes. "This is it." Cole closed his hand around the drive. Then he heard it again. Engines. Closer. Turning off the main road. Hank looked up at Elijah. "We need to seal the shelter. Now." Elijah nodded rapidly. "Hide the horse. Hide the drive. Whatever happens up there tonight, they can't find either." Cole glanced at the tiny horse, breathing fast, trembling. "You stay quiet, little guy. We'll be back." He handed the drive to Hank. "Hide it somewhere in the house, somewhere they won't think to look." Hank nodded once and climbed the ramp, boots thudding lightly. Cole gave the horse one last stroke down its neck, then hurried up after him. Elijah backed away as Cole pulled the hatch closed and dragged a stack of old lumber over it, disguising the entrance seamlessly beneath the shed's clutter. Hank gripped Cole's shoulder. "They'll be here any minute." Cole took a breath, steady and grim. "Then we stand ready." They moved toward the house, the sky now almost fully dark. Only a sliver of crimson lingered behind the western ridge, fading fast. The air was heavy, tight, as if the land itself were bracing for what was coming. Hank slipped inside first, heading to hide the USB drive. Elijah paused at the doorway, glancing back at the shed. "They'll burn this ranch if they have to," he whispered shakily. "You know that, right?" Cole didn't respond at first. Then he said quietly, "Let 'em try." Inside, the house was dim. They kept the lights off. No sense advertising their position. Hank returned quickly, wiping dust off his hands. "It's hidden," Hank said. "Deep. No way they find it." Cole nodded. "Good." Elijah moved to the window and peered through a gap in the curtain. "They're here," he whispered. Cole and Hank joined him. Down the long dirt road, maybe 400 yards out, headlights appeared. One pair, then two, then three. Vehicles moved slowly, deliberately, rolling in side by side like an advancing line. 3 SUVs, black, tinted, same as the one from the shack, only more of them. Cole felt his pulse slow. Not panic, not fear, but the kind of sharpened calm that came before a reckoning. "They're not sneaking in this time," Hank muttered. "They're coming bold." Elijah pressed a shaking hand to the glass. "Because they think Tom is dead. Because they think no one left can stop them." Cole straightened. "They're wrong." The SUVs continued forward until they rolled to a stop about 100 yards from the house. Engines idled. Doors didn't open. Nobody stepped out. They were waiting, watching, testing. A tense silence settled over the ranch, the kind that made a man aware of every heartbeat. "What are they waiting for?" Hank murmured. Cole kept his eyes on the dark silhouettes inside the vehicles. "They're waiting," he said quietly, "for us to come to them." Elijah looked panicked. "What do we do?" "We don't go out there," Hank said. "That's suicide." Cole shook his head slowly. "No, that's not why they're waiting." Elijah stared at him. "Then why?" Cole's eyes didn't leave the SUVs. "Because they want to see if we're scared." And then, as if on cue, the driver's door of the lead SUV finally opened. A single figure stepped out, the same man from the ranch that morning. Calm, controlled, calculated. But this time, he didn't come alone. 2 men stepped out beside him, armed. The man cupped his hands around his mouth and called out, "Cole Dawson, we just want to talk." Hank snorted. "Yeah, and I'm the governor." Cole took a single step forward, jaw tightening. "They came for the message," he said, "and they're not leaving without it." Elijah's voice trembled. "What are you gonna do?" Cole exhaled once, deep and steady. "Whatever I have to." He reached for the door. Night had fully fallen, and the standoff was about to begin. The doorknob felt colder than it should have in Cole's hand. For a moment he stood there, palm resting on the metal, listening to the low idle of engines outside, the distant shifting of cattle, the steady thud of his own heartbeat. The house around him was quiet, holding its breath the same way he was. Behind him, Hank said quietly, "You don't have to walk out there." Cole glanced back. "If I don't, they'll come in here. I'd rather meet 'em on my feet." Elijah stood near the kitchen table, gripping the back of a chair so hard his fingers trembled. "Don't let them see fear," he said in a rough voice. "That's all they respect." Cole nodded once. "I'm not the one who should be afraid tonight." He opened the door. The night hit him with cool air and open silence. The sky above was wide and dark, scattered with faint stars partially hidden behind thin clouds. The three SUVs sat like shadows at the far edge of the yard, headlights off now, only their silhouettes outlined by the faint moonlight. In front of the lead vehicle, the man from that morning stood waiting, hands loosely at his sides. The two men beside him kept a little distance, their postures relaxed but alert, the kind of relaxed that meant they were dangerous, even when they seemed still. Cole walked down the porch steps at an unhurried pace. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't call out. He let the silence stretch until he was close enough for his voice to carry clearly. "You said you wanted to talk," Cole called. "So talk." The man's lips curled in the faintest hint of a smile. "Good evening, Mr. Dawson," he said. "I'm glad you decided to be reasonable." "I haven't decided anything yet," Cole replied. "But I'm listening." The man tilted his head slightly, studying him. "You had visitors today." "Had a few," Cole said. "Can't say any left a good impression." The man ignored that. "You went west. You saw things that weren't meant for you. That puts you in a difficult position. For us and for you." Cole's jaw tightened. "You put yourself in a difficult position when you trespassed on my land, chased a half-starved horse through the desert, and left a ranger's badge strapped to its saddle." A flicker of irritation flashed in the man's eyes, quickly masked. "You found the badge," he said. "I figured you might." "You figured right," Cole said, "and I'd start choosing your next words real carefully." The man regarded him for a long, quiet moment. Then he said calmly, "Ranger Brenner made mistakes. Got involved where he shouldn't have. It cost him. It doesn't have to cost you." Cole took a step closer. He could hear the grain of gravel under his boots, feel the stretch of old scars over his knuckles as his fists clenched and unclenched. "What did you do to him?" Cole asked. The man shrugged one shoulder. "It's not important now. He's gone. What matters is what he left behind." "His father says different," Cole shot back. "Says your people held him, used him, forced him to help you keep your little off-the-books operation nice and tidy." The man didn't flinch at Elijah's mention, but his eyes did narrow just a fraction. "His father talks too much," the man said softly. "Old men get desperate, emotional, loose with the truth." Cole's gaze hardened. "Sometimes old men are the only ones still telling it." They stared at each other, the air between them thick with hostility and calculation. Finally, the man sighed as though bored of the dance. "Let's stop pretending," he said. "We're both men who appreciate honesty. So here it is. We know Brenner sent something out with that miniature. We know it reached your land, and we know you found it." Cole's heartbeat slowed, deliberate, controlled. "I found a frightened horse and a badge," he said. "That's all?" The man smiled thinly. "You're a decent liar, Mr. Dawson, but not good enough." He turned his head slightly, eyes flicking toward Cole's barn, then to the shed, then back to the house. The way a man would look at a chessboard he already knew how to win. "You moved the horse," he said. "Good instinct, but pointless." Cole kept his face neutral. "You seem awful sure of yourself for a trespasser standing on another man's land." "Confidence is a side effect of knowing what you're up against," the man replied. "We know you went to the shack. We know you saw the maps. We know you took something from there, or at least that you could have." "If you knew all that," Cole asked, "why aren't you searching the place instead of chatting with me?" "Because," the man said calmly, "I prefer cooperation to mess. You're not our target, Mr. Dawson, not yet. You're just holding our property." Cole swallowed. "Property? That drive," the man said. "The one hidden in the saddle. I can picture it. Small, unmarked, very important to us. Dangerous for you." Cole didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. The man smiled again, that smooth, practiced expression that looked friendly from a distance and predatory up close. "You think you're the first rancher to stumble into something bigger than himself?" he asked. "You're not. Most don't live long enough to regret it." Hank's voice rang out from the porch. "Man, you talk a lot for someone who drove all the way out here to ask for a favor." Cole didn't turn, but he could feel Hank's presence behind him like a steady weight. The man's gaze shifted past Cole toward the house. "Mr. Morales," he said calmly, "you should be more careful where you stick your nose. You've got family in this county. Kids, grandkids. It would be a shame if trouble found them." Hank's silence at that was heavier than any threat. Cole took another step forward, blocking the man's view of the porch. "You're not going to touch his family," Cole said quietly. "You're not going to touch my land, my cattle, or that horse." The man's facade cracked just enough to reveal a flicker of annoyance. "This isn't righteous outlaw business, Mr. Dawson. This is logistics. We move things where others can't. We pay well to be invisible. Brenner tried to make us visible. That was his mistake. Don't make it yours." "And what happens?" Cole asked. "If I tell you I don't have what you're looking for?" The man's answer was immediate. "Then we search," he said simply. "Every fence, every barn, every room. We turn your ranch inside out, and when we're done, there won't be enough left of your reputation to get credit at the feed store." Cole's jaw tightened. He knew men like this, men who believed that fear was a lever and other people were just gears to be moved around, men who had never known what it meant to build something with their own hands, land, family, livestock, and fight to keep it intact. "I burned down my life," Cole said quietly, "and I guarantee you'll lose a lot more than a piece of plastic and a scared little horse." The man's eyes cooled. "Is that a threat?" "No," Cole said. "That's a promise." A tense silence stretched between them. In the distance, thunder rolled again, closer this time, but still too far to bring rain. The air felt thick with static. The man finally turned his head and nodded to the men beside him. "Last chance," he said. "You bring us the drive, we walk away. No more visits, no more phone calls, you never see us again. That's the best deal you're going to get." Cole thought of the tiny USB drive hidden deep in his house. He thought of Elijah, the pain in the old man's eyes. He thought of Tom Brenner, somewhere out in the dark and dead or alive, sending his last hope strapped to a miniature horse. He also thought of quiet mornings on the ranch, coffee on the porch, cattle moving slow and calm, a life that didn't involve men like this. He had a choice: give it up and maybe keep that life, or keep it and blow that life apart. But only one of those choices let him sleep at night. "No deal," Cole said. The man's expression went flat. "That's disappointing." He snapped his fingers once. Behind him, more doors opened. 2 more men stepped out from each of the other SUVs. 6 in total now, spreading out in a slow arc, starting to encircle the yard. Hank shifted on the porch, posture tightening. "Cole." "I see him," Cole said. The man raised his voice, calm but sharp enough to carry. "Search the property, top to bottom. Find the horse, find the drive. If they resist—" He paused. "Convince them that cooperating would have been better." The men began to move. Cole took a single step forward, blocking the nearest one. "You set foot in my barn," he said quietly, "and I swear to you, this doesn't end the way you think." The man from the ranch looked almost amused. "You're outnumbered, Mr. Dawson." "Maybe," Cole said, "but you're on my land, and I don't scare easy." For the first time that night, a hint of genuine respect flickered in the man's face. "You chose wrong," he said, "but I'll give you this. You chose brave." He turned away, giving his men room to fan out. The standoff was over. The invasion had begun. And somewhere under the shed, a tiny horse shifted nervously in the dark, guarding the last piece of truth a Texas Ranger had died to send. The first man crossed the boundary of Cole's yard with the ease of someone who'd done this before. Someone who had walked onto other people's property, made threats, taken what he wanted, and expected no one to resist him. Tonight would be different. Cole stepped forward, positioned between the intruders and his land. His shoulders felt heavier than usual, as if the entire weight of the ranch, the fences he'd built, the cattle he'd raised, the memories burned into every acre, was sitting square on his back. He wasn't protecting just a USB drive. He was protecting the truth a dying man had trusted him with, and the tiny horse that had carried it across the desert. Hank emerged from the porch, making no effort to hide the tension in his stance. He wasn't a man who looked for violence, but he wasn't the kind to run from it either. Elijah stood in the doorway behind them, face pale, but jaw clenched tight. The man in charge walked forward, stopping just short of Cole. "Last chance," he said. "Give us what we came for." Cole shook his head. "You're not getting the drive, and you're not touching that horse." The man exhaled slowly, as if genuinely disappointed. He nodded to his men. "Take the barn first." Cole moved before they did. He didn't swing, he didn't punch, he didn't shout. He simply stepped directly into the path of the nearest man, forcing him to either confront him or back down. The man reached for Cole's shoulder to shove him aside. That was a mistake. Cole grabbed the man's wrist, pivoted, and used the man's own momentum to slam him into the dirt. Hard. Dust billowed up in a cloud. The man wheezed, stunned. It wasn't a flashy move, just ranch strength meeting bad intention. Another man lunged from the side, but Hank was faster. The rancher threw an arm around his attacker's neck and pulled him backward, using the porch rail as leverage to send him sprawling. For a brief second, the yard went quiet. Two of the intruders groaned in the dirt. Cole and Hank stood firm. Elijah hovered behind them, shocked but determined. The leader watched the scene unfold with a flicker of frustration in his eyes. "I warned you," he said quietly. "I tried to handle this clean." "So try harder," Cole replied, breathing steady. "Or leave." The man's expression hardened into something colder than anger, resolution. He raised his hand. The remaining 4 men advanced. But before they reached the porch, another sound cut through the tense yard, a long, low groan of metal under strain. Hank's eyes widened. "That's the west gate. Someone's coming." The men froze. Another set of headlights swept across the pasture from the opposite side of the ranch, moving fast but controlled. A truck, not black, not tinted, not part of their group. As it skidded to a stop, dust exploded around it. A man stepped out. Tall, thin, exhausted, hurt, but alive. Elijah's breath hitched. "Oh my God!" Cole stared, stunned. Hank whispered, "No damn way." The man leaned heavily against the truck door, one hand pressed to his ribs, his face bruised and cut, his body shaking with obvious pain. But his eyes were sharp, determined, focused. "Tom!" Elijah gasped. "Tom!" Texas Ranger Thomas Brenner, thought missing, assumed dead, hunted for years, stood alive in the yard, barely, but standing. The intruders reacted instantly. 2 reached for weapons inside their jackets. Tom Brenner raised a hand weakly, voice cracking but clear. "Don't do it." The men froze, not out of fear, but out of shock. Tom pointed to the leader. "You don't have the authority anymore." The leader stepped forward, face twisting. "You're supposed to be dead." Tom coughed, blood at the corner of his mouth. "You almost got your wish." Elijah ran toward him, but Tom held up a hand. "I'm not done." He looked at Cole. "You got the horse?" Cole nodded. "Safe, hidden." Tom closed his eyes briefly with relief. "Good, because what's on that drive, it'll end them, all of them." The leader snarled. "Enough." "No," Tom said sharply, cutting him off. "It's over." For the first time, the intruders looked uncertain. Tom pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket pocket, wet with sweat and faintly stained with blood. He tossed it to the dirt between them. Cole stepped forward and picked it up. It was a list. Names, locations, dates, routes, payments. Every detail of the secret operation. Enough evidence to bury anyone attached to it. Cole looked up at Tom. "You carried this out yourself?" Tom managed a weak smile. "They took everything from me, but one thing. A reason to fight." The leader's calm facade shattered. "You think a piece of paper is going to stop this?" Cole stepped forward, holding the paper. "No, but this will." He pulled out his phone and snapped a picture, sending it directly to the sheriff's department, the Texas Rangers headquarters, and the nearest border precinct. Hank did the same. Elijah did too. The leader watched helplessly. Tom's voice went cold. "They have everything now. You move on, Cole, you move on me. Every ranger and sheriff in 3 counties will descend here by morning." His body swayed. Elijah caught him as he fell. The leader's men shifted uncertainly. They knew this was no longer a cleanup job. This was exposure, and exposure was the one thing they couldn't survive. The leader hissed under his breath, eyes burning holes through Cole. "You have no idea what you've started." Cole stared back. "No, you started it. Tom finished it." For a long, tense moment it wasn't clear what the men would do. But then, slowly, they backed away, one by one, into their vehicles. Doors slammed, engines started. The SUVs retreated down the road, disappearing into the darkness they came from. Silence settled like dust. The threat, the long shadow these men had cast over the land, was gone, for now. Cole helped Elijah lower Tom gently onto the porch. The old man held his son's face in trembling hands, tears streaking down his dust-covered cheeks. "You made it," Elijah whispered. "You came home." Tom managed a weak smile. "I had help." He looked toward the shed. The tiny horse stood in the doorway, having pushed its way free during the commotion, watching quietly. Cole knelt and scratched the little horse's neck. "You did good, buddy. Real good." Hank exhaled a long breath. "Hell of a night." "No kidding," Cole said. Tom's voice rasped, soft and tired. "Cole." Cole leaned in. "Thank you," Tom whispered. Cole swallowed hard. "Any man would have done the same." Tom shook his head faintly. "No, not any man." Cole didn't argue. Some debts weren't paid with words. By the time the first sheriff's truck arrived, The sky was turning pale with dawn. The long night was over, but the truth Tom Brenner risked his life to send was just beginning its journey. And on a quiet Texas ranch, a tiny horse slept peacefully for the first time in days, its mission complete.